The first two speakers have introduced the notion of new economic thinking. So he talks about the mobilization of funds, to where they are necessary to make the innovation that are needed, either technological or non-technological, that one talks about. In order to ensure that that growth that is in the first component of our NEM model, the new economic model, that is high income, it's not just a question of achieving GDP by 2020 as part of the development process, but actually to see that the impact of that growth is felt all the way to the bottom. And that is where intermediations are involved, institutional as well as governmental. And that you must keep in mind. Where are we going with the GDP, with the EDP, for instance, or the NEM implementation plan? So I'll come back afterwards with posing to you two examples which may allow you to rethink a lot of things that you are so used and comfortable with, that you got that one-way traffic that says the government knows best, to something that where you have yourself to come up with those ideas in order for you to survive in the next economy. Now, let me now shift to another dimension, to talk about entrepreneurship in relation to small businesses particularly, and we need to go global, because the technology will be such that even a small remote company, one person or entrepreneurial operation in the remotest of the villages in this country can sell to the world. But whether the SME Corp is ready for that kind of thinking, let's say one is ours to say. Thank you, Tansi Dr. Kamal. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, Tansi, ladies and gentlemen. What I would like to share with you here about the presentation of SMEs, especially on the economic outlook. And then secondly, I would like to share on the SME development programs in health. And lastly, regarding about digital future and mega trends which will affect the SMEs. Can we have the slides, please? So if you can have a look at the first slide here, the global group is projected to strengthen as the global economy maintains the momentum with growth in global trade and industrial production improve. As you can see from 2016, the global growth was at 3.2%. This year projected at 3.5%, and next year will be 3.6%. However, the short-term risks are properly balanced, I can say, but the medium-term risks are still skewed towards the downside. And among the potential risks of the downside are the financial tensions, policy uncertainty, geopolitical risks, as well as the inward-looking policies. For Malaysia, as you can see there on the table, with a challenging economic environment locally and abroad, Malaysia's GDP growth is forecasted at 4.3 to 4.8% in 2017. And this is due to income support measures and higher infrastructure spending, improved exports driven by global pickup in trade, as well as stabilizing commodity prices have lifted the business sentiment and investment. In terms of the performance of SMEs in Malaysia, SME GDP recorded a growth of 5.2% in 2016 and continued to outperform the national economic growth 4.2% in 2016. The SME GDP growth was underpinned by domestic demand and supportive policies by the government, despite considerable external and domestic challenges. Consequently, the contribution of SMEs to the overall GDP has increased in 2016 to 36.6%, and export has increased to 18.6%, and employment contribution by SMEs is at 65.3%. In other words, SME has become the backbone to the Malaysian economy. And if you look at the definition of SMEs, we actually redefined the definition of SMEs back in 2014. And we have two so-called categories. One is the manufacturing and the other one is services and other sectors. SMEs is defined as those companies or firms that have revenue less than 50 million ringgit Malaysian annual revenue, or employees less than 200. Whereas for the services, the turnover is less than 20 million ringgit per year, and employees less than 75, whichever is lower. In terms of the numbers of business establishments for SMEs, currently, as per the census that has been conducted last year, reference year 2015, we have 907,065 SMEs in Malaysia, represent 98.5% business entities in Malaysia are SMEs. The 1.5% are those multinationals, large firms, as well as GLCs. And if you look at the proportion of the medium, small, and micro enterprises as the most, 76.5% of all SMEs in Malaysia are micro enterprises. Only 21.2% are small, and only 2.3% are medium category. In terms of sectors of the economy, services are the most, 89.2% of SMEs are in services. Manufacturing is only about 5.3%, construction 4.3%, agriculture 1.1%, last but not least mining, which is very small, 0.1% of the total SMEs. Comparing the contribution of SMEs in ASEAN as well as in APEC countries or APEC economies, our total establishments and employment are relatively good if you compare that. Nevertheless, there are rooms for improvement for our SMEs to contribute more in the GDP, to reach the highest GDP contribution in both ASEAN and APEC up around 58 to 59%. As compared to us, we are only at 36.6%. And the export, well, you can see the highest range of ASEAN countries, 30%, APEC economies, 68%, whereas we are still at 18.6% contribution of export by SMEs. Just a quick one, where SME Corp is actually. SME Corp is the so-called
Central Coordinating Agency for SME development in Malaysia. SME Corp is under MITI, Ministry of International Trade and Industry, as an agency, and we started as SMIDEC in 1996 and rebranded as SME Corp in 2009. And as mentioned just now, we are the secretariat to NSDC. We also have our own SME hub, where we actually manage the SME data and information, as well as implement our own SME development programs. As you can see in the next slide, there are various constraints that SME are facing. And these are the 6 constraints. The first one is on the innovation and technology, market access, human capital development, legal and regulatory framework, access to financing, as well as infrastructure. With that, we come up with a strategic SME framework, what we call it as the Strategic Framework 2016 till 2020, to actually overcome the 6 constraints that have been limiting the SME growth. And this SME framework actually aligned with the SME master plan, as well as the 11th Malaysian plan. There are 4 goals that are to be achieved by 2020. The first one is to increase business formation. The next one is to expand number of high growth and innovative firms, raise productivity, last but not least, to intensify formalization. And this is not only for producing or creating high growth companies, but also looking into the inclusive innovation, or what we call it as inclusive business. There are about 169 SME development programs in Malaysia for 2017, amounting about 5.87 billion ringgit to be implemented by various ministries and agencies. And 44 programs out of that 169 are for the access to financing, 46 for human capital development, 34 for market access, 29 programs for the innovation as well as the technology adoption, and 14 programs are for the infrastructure. So moving forward, all these programs need to be aligned with mega trends as well as the Industry Revolution 4.0. And under SME Corp, we have development programs for SMEs comprise 5 aspects. One is the advisory services. The second one, we monitor and evaluate our SMEs. We have capacity building programs. We have financing programs as well for grants as well as soft loan. And last but not least, in terms of technology and market, where we have such programs as well. Talking about creating innovative companies or SMEs, we have implementing 4 sectoral development programs since 2012. And these programs are aimed at increasing the numbers of high-growth companies, as mentioned earlier, as well as their revenue to actually increase 20% year to year in terms of sales, and revenue, and to be part of the global supply chain. If you can look at the chart there, we have entry point project number 10 under the Economic Transformation Program, where we actually kick off in December 2012, about 10 or so LED and SSL companies from the electrical, electronic, and KEA. And secondly, we have BioNext initiative. These are biotech companies. We kick off in 2015, July 2015. And we also have the recent one that was kicked off last year, entry point project number 8. It's about aerospace. Kick-off of April 2016. About 20 aerospace SMEs has been nurtured and currently being nurtured still. And we have also high impact program number 5 under the SME Master Plan, where we actually kick off in October 2016 to nurture and develop a homegrown medical devices companies to become global champion. And talking about innovation, government initiative to support growth innovative SMEs, we have about 13 SME innovation programs, as you can see there, starting from one InnoCert certification program by SME Corp. We have SIRIM Fraunhofer program, managed and driven by SIRIM, AIM standbys, TPM incubation program, Public-Private Research Network, PPRN, driven by MOHI, Ministry of Higher Education. We have commercialization of R&D under MTDC, as well as Technology Acquisition Fund. We have CRADLE, we have MEVCAP, MDV, MOSTI, and we also have high impact programs 5, 6, and number 2 under the SME Master Plan. So what I'm saying here is that government has actually come up with several platforms for the SMEs to become more innovative in that sense. And talking about innovation, inclusive innovation, we have one specific program called Inclusive Innovation under High Impact Program number 6. Now I would like to share some of the things that we're going to do with relation to mega trends. As we know that we are charting towards the future, as been shared just now by Tan Sri Wahid, the TN50, there are 4 mega trends that have direct and far-reaching impact on SMEs. Namely, the first one is digital future and Industrial Revolution 4.0. Secondly, globalization. The third one is community living. And the fourth one, rising entrepreneurship. You can see that the M1 and M2, megatrends number 1 and megatrends number 2, are looking into high growth, innovative companies or SMEs. However, for M3 and M4, community living and rising of entrepreneurship, these are more to include the excluded ones, for them to become more part of the ecosystem, for them to be productive as what we actually nurtured for the high growth SMEs as well. And the 2-pronged strategy that we actually going to use is to look into the high growth innovative firms, as mentioned just now, creating more global SMEs through targeted assistance in terms of automation, digitalization, and robotization. But we also have strategy number 2, increasing the micro enterprises, especially bottom 40, which is the bottom of the pyramid, contribution to the economy, which consists of the startups, the B40, the disabled, as well as some categories of women agenda as well. So going forward, we have this so-called approach on e-commerce adoption. So e-commerce is one of the digital thing that we should look into, especially nurturing our SMEs, aligning to megatrend number 1 and number 2. E-commerce adoption is key for SMEs to be part of the global chain, because e-commerce or e-marketplace is the fastest way for SMEs to export their products or services. And the 3 strategy approach that we're gonna use or we're gonna adopt is, the first one is to have or create the e-commerce portal for the SMEs. The second one is to train the SMEs via e-wizard as well as learning modules. The last one is to prepare as well as to ensure that SMEs going into the e-marketplace, what we call as e-commerce platform. And the FTZ is one of the initiatives that have been launched recently in March by our Yang Amat Berhormat Perdana Menteri together with Alibaba Group CEO Jack Ma. And it is expected to double the growth rate of Malaysia SMEs, as well as to increase export by $25 billion US, as well as creating 60,000 jobs by 2025. And the FTZ provides physical and virtual zones to facilitate SMEs to capitalize on the convergence of exponential growth of internet economy as well as cross-border e-commerce activities. And hopefully by 2020, our GDP in terms of e-commerce will increase to 211 billion ringgit. Okay, last but not least, I just would like to share one last slide that we also do showcasing our SME products, whether it comes from the big SMEs as well as small SMEs, what we call it through SMEDEX. And SMEDEX actually is an annual showcase. For this year, it will happen on the 15th until 17th of November. Besides showcasing their products and services, we also build business networks, opportunity to be part of the global supply chain. And on the right side, as you can see, there is Enterprise 50, where we actually recognize our SMEs with prestigious award from the top 50 homegrown SMEs that we actually assess by third party, neutral party. And currently, we already have 60 out of that 621 entrepreneurs or winners coming from E50 been listed on Bursa Malaysia. I think with that, I'll end my presentation, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Rizal. Let's go then to the last speaker, Professor Abu, to discuss the central theme of this panel, that is, from an economic perspective, the impact of policies towards sustainable and inclusive growth, particularly on the distribution side, which the professor will talk about. He wants to use the podium.
Thank you. Honorable moderator, learned speakers, panelists, and the participants. Assalamu alaikum and very good afternoon. First of all, I would like to congratulate IDR and the Perak government for this excellent Festival of Ideas and Pangkor Dialogue. And then I would like to express my thanks and gratitude to them, to the organizers, for inviting me all the way from Bangladesh. to participate and enjoy this dialogue. Well, we had Millennium Development Goals, and at the moment we have Sustaining Development Goals. These goals have 17 aspects, 17 goals, which are to me very inclusive. But the problem is the theory and practice. And the theory, we have 17 goals which are inclusive in the SDG, Sustainable Development Goals. But unfortunately, at the policy level, most of the time, the policymakers don't think about and consider all the goals. Most of the time, they are very concerned about the material development, manufacturing development, industrial development, ignoring the other side of the human welfare. So, can I go to the next topic, please? Next slide. Oh, sorry. Okay, I have it here. So, if you want to cover this topic very quickly in 10 or 15 minutes time, then we have four aspects here. SDG means Sustainable Development Goals or the development goals, and equity, about the income distribution. Number 2, development goals and environment, growth and equity. And number 3, development goals, equity and welfare. And number 4, what to do about it. If you consider the first topic, the development goals and developmental efforts and equity, there's one problem here, that when you are dealing with material development, then we think that it is about industrial development, material development, not the holistic development. So if we do that, then there is a problem, the sectoral shift or sectoral discrimination. The development efforts are concentrated in the city, urban areas, and agriculture or primary areas are neglected, number 1. I cannot explain this because of the time constraint. Number 2, there's a class shift. You know, even in the cities, urban areas, there are 2 classes of people, the rich people and the poor. So when you have an industrial development, manufacturing development, then the rich gets richer and the poor becomes poorer, even in the cities. So because of this, most of the people have low income, those who are in the rural areas and also those who are in the cities. In the cities, there are 2 classes. The poor people, their income becomes even smaller and smaller as compared to the other group. So in relative terms, they are poorer as compared to the before. And they have less purchasing power. Now, if you want to have a development in the manufacturing sector, that you lose the local market, because most of the people will have to buy things, but the market size is very small because people are poor, they don't have the purchasing power. So if you can have the international market, only then you can sustain this development. And also the SDR index will be affected because most of the people, they cannot afford to send their children to the schools for education. So the HRD index also is affected. And if you see the second issue, the SDG or development of efforts and environment, you understand that we have unplanned and indiscriminate pursuit of industrialization. It will affect the environment adversely. Unplanned and indiscriminate use of natural resources. And in this way, you can finish your adjustable natural resources. Then you have a problem of disposal of chemical waste You have a pollution, climate change, flood, drought, all these kind of environmental effects. So what will happen? There are several things. One thing, that you have the environmental hazards. When you have a flood, the city is not affected. The rural area, the agricultural sector is affected. Then the people living in the rural areas, they are affected. So agriculture, the primary sector and manufacturing is no more complementary. If you have two things, agriculture is more affected and the modern sector is benefited. Then number two, the sectoral imbalance because of the environment, sectoral imbalance in the income distribution. This is understood. The manufacturing sector is developed at the cost of the agriculture because when you have environmental hazards created by the manufacturing sector is benefited, and when the agricultural sector is affected. So this is, one sector is benefited at the cost of the other sector. So this will lead to the sustainability of the development also. And the last one is the equity and welfare will be affected because of these environmental problems. Now, what will happen? The ultimate effect is this. There is an increase in the disparity of income distribution because of this indiscriminate industrialization efforts. Let us have a quick journey through some slides. What will happen in the income distribution when there is an income distribution? Normally, the 80% of the people have 20% of the resources. This is the world phenomenon on the average. And 20% of the people have 80% of the resources of the country. And then this happens. The few people with some heads of the skulls of the people and most of the people are in that shape. They are at risk of life. If you ask the rich people to help, they cannot see the poor people. Why? Their stomach is so big, they cannot see them. So in this condition, what is the condition of the lifestyle of the people? This is the rich people, you can see. No need to explain. Oh, darling, where are you? Even the dog is asking with the, with the bottle. Then this is not here, but in the developed countries, but still it is there. Then lifestyle of the poor people. In the street, you can see the cars, and also they are there at the same place. There are some people are this. You can see this. You can see this. So you can see the two classes of people. The rich people become richer because of indiscriminate pursuit of industrialization and material development and the destruction of environment. And side by side, there are poor people. You have seen the condition of the poor people. Then you can see what they do for the survival, poor people. That means this kind of developmental efforts, this kind of what I mentioned, increases inequality, and inequality adversely affects human welfare. Now what to be done? How to get rid of this kind of adverse effects? There are a few things to be done. Number one, sectoral developmental balance. In development policy, the government should have a policy that there should be balanced agricultural development and development of agriculture-based industries and also the manufacturing industries. There should be balanced efforts on the part of the government. Number two, technological balance, labor intensity. If there is one country where labor is abundant, they should use labor-intensive technology, not labor-saving technology. But if the labor is scarce, then you can think of another kind of technology which can use the people depending on the situation of the country. What I mean here is that we should involve the people. We cannot exclude some people that they are not involved in the development efforts. Number three, optimum balance in the functional distribution of income. Okay, once you have the balance in the industrial and in agricultural sector, in the all different sectors, even in the technology, then still the government has to see another thing. The functional distribution is the distribution of produce, goods, and services in the process of production. It means what will be the wage structure, what will be the rental of different things, what will be the remuneration for the capital. So this structure should be optimum. There should be optimum balance in this. What I mean is this, for example, if you're talking about labor, what I mean is that labor exploitation should be controlled. So that is what I mean by the functional distribution of income. Number four is the size distribution of income. Size distribution means once you have the balance in the functional distribution of income, then still there will be some people well off, some people will be worse off, and there should be some mechanism to balance that also. For example, in Islamic finance, even His Royal Highness in the morning, he mentioned about the Islamic finance. You know, zakat is one institution that will try to balance the existing or remaining imbalance between income distribution. And then, even if not Islamic finance, in the normal case also, there will be a tax structure or other system. That is called size distribution of income, which does not have any reward. Distribution is not paying away, is not for any reward. Number five is the education. There should be a policy at the government level to provide the accessible education to all sectors of people, even in the rural areas. In the urban areas, if the cost of education is higher, then in the rural areas it should be made lower so that any poor person also can send their children for education. Check externalities resulting from industrialization. This is talking about the environment. So what is the policy about disposal of the chemical waste, pollution? So if you have an industry, that there is a private cost and there is a social cost. The social cost should be minimized so that the environment is not affected. So if we follow these policies, probably the adverse effect of the developmental efforts can be minimized, and that will increase the welfare of the people. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much. So now you have the four presentations. At some point, the Secretariat is going to intervene to show you how you are going to interact with the panel using a new technology. So it's also a test for how you can absorb technology in a shortest possible time. I would like to summarize what these four has presented, the four distinguished speakers have presented, in terms of what His Excellency President Jamil Mahuad said, the former president of Ecuador says, that the success is given by a formula of technology plus finance plus KUKO. KUKO is culture and community, which is the social sustainability part. The technology part is essentially how we make use of knowledge and exploit nature in a sustainable way, nature being the environment. And finance is basically the economic issue. All of these three dimensions are in a critical state in many of our countries, including Malaysia. And the problem is institutional. And underlying all of the three dimensions of the new economic policy, in terms of sustainability, high income, which is growth, and inclusiveness, which is distribution, there is something still missing that that we need to sort of collectively think through, and maybe taking off from the current problems that we now face going forward in absorbing this new technology. What we are seeking is a more inclusive, sustainable, learning and sharing society, many of which we have lost track of, and we are in danger of getting deeper into the hole. In that context then, what we want to see, because technology alone is no guarantee that we will succeed in achieving our global objective of sustainable development. And finance alone, even if we have all the money we have and we don't waste them or we don't engage in corrupt practices and so on, will still be not enough. Money doesn't buy happiness, as they say. Therefore, in the end, it is only a question of social contributions, social innovation, the sharing component, the values associated with development. The SDG is actually a very value-based set of goals, although it can be translated into the required funding, the technology that is going on, and so on. But the question to you is, are we ready for an innovative society in order to achieve a sustainable development, our sustainable development objectives, including the question of equity and social justice? So have that broad thing in mind when you begin to set your questions. I would not summarize more than that. The two examples I want to give you is I want to do it at the end. But let me just give one more thought, plant into your thought process. I said that we have only a window of up to 2025. That is 7 more years. This is because one of our strategies and many of the emerging economy strategic development pathway has been to catch up with the more advanced countries. Like what we want to become is a developed country, to become a member of the club of developed countries according to one criteria, and that is the GDP per capita target of 15,000, now 12,000 USD in the classification of developed status. But there are already countries that are well ahead of us. So catching up, largely through technological catching up, which is meant to improve productivity and therefore increase value added to our growth process, and therefore better distribute through the institutions of state and non-state organizations, so that the community can succeed and participate in that process, is something that was dependent on an earlier technology in the middle 50s, even earlier than just before the war or during the war. So in technological diffusion through an economy, and in this case a global economy, it is at least 50-year cycle. Now that 50-year cycle is about to end, and a new one is emerging, and that is the robotics, the automation, 3D printing, the things that we are now talking about, essentially disruptive technologies. So in the diffusion of technology or innovation, which may not be just technological, but also institutional and social, as Dr. Muhammad says, we are at a very critical stage that we are facing a moving target. By the time we are able to absorb the technology that we now know, at least anticipate, things would have moved to a new set of technology, a new era. So we are caught somewhere in trying to catch up and at the same time leapfrog in order to become a true member of the developed economy and a sharing and equitable society. So the challenge is huge. So in that context then, TN50 is well timed. We have another 50 years to think through what that model is. But at the moment, we are still nowhere where we are going to be in terms of the next 50 years. The Academy of Science Malaysia commissioned a study recently, and they go into 4 components: economy, technology and science, political system, and governance. There are 4 groups that went through a period of 12 months to come up with, through lab sessions, workshops, and so on, and they have come up. We know, for instance, the issue of governance and society has got 2 dimensions of, in this case, either we are going to be developed or we are going to be bankrupt, the 1 dimension, the economic dimension. Either we are going to be a totalitarian state or a functioning democracy on the political dimension. Somewhere in these 4 cells are the issue of education, population growth, science and technology forecasting, and eventually the human capital. So how to put this all together is one of the challenges that the ASM face. But to date, after 1 year of that deliberation, where they got 4 so-called key drivers, plus 5 other supporting drivers, which are impacted by these 4: economic, political, governance, and finance. They could not put together what the scientists put together in terms of technology forecasting and what the political scientists and the social scientists put together, including the economists, have put together. They cannot make it click. So therefore, that report is still outstanding to present to the government in respect of TN50. So that shows that we have got something missing. Now, you think through what that missing thing is. It could be institutional, it could be our human capital status, it could be our value system. We want to be like Britain, but we also want to be like Saudi Arabia in many ways. So we are a very confused lot. But that is disruptive thinking. It requires you to think through the challenges that we are now facing. Now, I would like to now just leave that with you. I will invite the Secretariat to introduce the technology of participation, dialogue. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Please a round of applause to our moderator, Tan Sri Datuk Dr. Kamal Saleh, and all our speakers, Tan Sri Datuk Sri Abdul Wahid Omar, Dr. Muhammad Abdul Khalid, Mr. Rizal Naini, and Professor Dr. Abul Hassan M. Sadek. Thank you very much. We've come to the end of plenary 1.
Done.
Yeah, we're done. Thank you very much. We're going to take a short break. We're coming back for dialogue session 1, Utara Ku Dialogue,
We lost half an hour.
in 10 minutes. With Datuk Rizal. Thank you.
Well, let me say my thank you also. I didn't realize that we lost half an hour
Yeah, I know,
for this session. So there was no Q&A. So I'd like you to join me again to thank the 4 panelists for their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Come back. Come back at 3:55. Yeah. We'll see all of you in this room at 3:55 for dialogue session 1, Utara Ku Dialogue. Thank you.
think button is fine. Then got the, I want to test the slides and see. Ta-da. And breathing also can hear. I don't like to breathe. Okay. All right, test, test. Okay, I can hear myself, so that's good. All right, so let's. Very good afternoon. Can you hear? Okay, a very good afternoon to our guest, distinguished guest here. Okay. I think so.